Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Welcome to Golden Blue today, everybody. This is a college football channel. So if you like college football, hit the like and subscribe button. It's that simple. Also, send gear to represent your team and be a part of my background forever. All you have to do is send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. You know, isn't it funny, going into the Pac-12 championship game, it seemed like one team had playoff aspirations and one team had just been denied their playoff aspirations. You had your opportunity, USC. You had your opportunity and you absolutely blew it. And I know, your quarterback was injured. Where were your wide receivers? You're supposed to have some of the best wide receivers in the entire nation. The best wide receiver in the entire nation with Jordan Addison. Where were they? I know Utah has a really good defense, but you're supposed to have one of the best offenses in the nation. And I understand Caleb Williams became a one-dimensional quarterback with the injury. But my gosh, the wide receivers, they couldn't get open. I didn't know Utah's defense was that good. I mean, they were really, really good. And then there's this other team, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They got absolutely humiliated by Michigan at home. And now because USC gets absolutely obliterated by Utah, you're back in it. That's right. The Ohio State Buckeyes are back in the playoff picture. I mean, I know it's simple math. We all knew that if USC lost, or maybe even if TCU lost, that Ohio State was back in. But still, to actually see USC get absolutely destroyed. I mean, this was nothing like the first game. They went on the road and they hung in with Utah, lost by 1 point in that 2-point conversion. But in this game, they got manhandled. They owned the first quarter. They were up 17-3, and then ever since about, 5 minutes left in the second quarter, it was Utah's game. Utah's game. USC scored 10 points the rest of the game. That is pitiful. That's West Virginia pitiful. That's how bad that was. That is what you call West Virginia pitiful. So if I'm comparing you to West Virginia, you know that you had a bad game. So yeah, the Trojans, they are out. I do, you know what, I am empathetic. I do feel bad for Caleb Williams. You know, he tried to gut it out. It was obvious. He was nowhere close to being 100%. And I'm watching the end of the game. He's psyched again like a 20-yard loss. I think the final score is going to be 47-24. Absolute mauling Utah put on USC. But yeah, I do feel bad for the guy because, you know, he's worked the entire season. He had a great season. Then he gets injured and he has a bad game. So I do feel bad for him. But what about the rest of the guys? The rest of this team did not stand up for Caleb Williams. So, okay, so from watching this game, does this mean that USC was basically Caleb Williams? That's what this tells me. Caleb Williams gets injured and the team crumbles. It falls apart. So what I'm seeing, what that tells me is USC equaled Caleb Williams. The rest of the team really didn't matter. Even though you had Mario Williams for a wide receiver, you had Jordan Addison as your wide receiver, and I know your star running back Travis Dye, he went down with an injury, but still, where were those other stars? And this defense was exposed by Utah's offense. And yes, Utah had a great offense, but USC, if you want to win the Pac-12 and get to the playoffs, your defense has to get better. Alex Grinch this, Alex Grinch that. He's not a good defensive coordinator. He helped Oklahoma a little bit, and he's helped USC a little bit. But he's not a good defensive coordinator. He's average at best. He's average at best, and average at best, guess what? Loses you the Pac-12 championship. Utah, for the second year in a row, not only are they the Pac-12 champs, but they beat the runner-up of the Pac-12, the second best team in the Pac-12, 4 times. They beat Oregon twice last year, and they beat USC twice this year. That's pretty stinking good. And I think what they said earlier is this is the 4th straight year that Utah has even been in the Pac-12 championship. Utah has come into the Pac-12 and they have absolutely owned the Pac-12. But for whatever reason, they pick up multiple losses and they knock themselves out of the playoffs. So fine, whatever. Own the Pac-12, Utah, but stop picking up 2 and 3 and 4 losses in the regular season. That hurts the Pac-12. Now the Pac-12 is like, well, thanks, Utah. Appreciate that. Now we're not in the playoffs again. And, we don't mind you winning the Pac-12, but stop picking up so many losses in the regular season. Do they take games off? I'm wondering, how did they lose to Florida? Riddle me that. How did they lose to Florida? I know, I gave all the excuses. First game of the year. It was on the road. The atmosphere was absolutely insane. And Florida didn't know that they sucked at that point in time. It was the beginning of the season. I understand all that. But Florida, think about that. Florida beat Utah. That makes absolutely no sense. And then, of course, UCLA beat Utah. I understand UCLA is better. But, man, you just throttled USC. And you beat USC the first time. I don't understand it. And then, of course, they get beat by Oregon. Now, they only got beat 2017 on the road. They had a good showing. But that should have been your only loss. You shouldn't have lost to Florida, and you shouldn't have lost to UCLA. But here we are. And the Pac-12 is out of the playoffs again. Pac-12 is like, thank you, Utah. Appreciate that. Pac-12, I've gone to bat for you so many times. I would like to see the Pac-12 in the playoffs again. But if you keep doing this, you're not going to be in the playoffs. And USC and UCLA, they're going to be bye-bye to the Big Ten not too long from now. And I'm hearing that Deon Sanders has accepted the job at Colorado. Maybe that could give the Pac-12 a boost. Maybe it'll shed some light on the Pac-12 because Colorado has been bad. He has his work cut out for him because Colorado isn't just bad. They are really, really bad. I mean, they're losing games by 25 or more points. One win. I think it was against Cal. That's bad. So he's recruiting his staff. He's preparing himself to accept the job at Colorado. He will be the new coach at Colorado. That is insane to think about. So let me get this straight. Colorado can grab Deon Sanders, but West Virginia retains Neil Brown. What are we doing in Morgantown? Man, I'm getting super sidetracked. Let's get back on track. So back to this team. Ohio State. You get absolutely obliterated at home by Michigan. Michigan is headed to the playoffs no matter what. Even if they lose to Purdue by 30, they're still headed to the playoffs. Now you're back in it. You're in the playoffs. Georgia is in no matter what. Win, lose, draw, doesn't matter. Georgia is in. Michigan is in no matter what. Win, lose, or draw, Michigan is in. And now Ohio State is in. They have no more games to play. Ohio State will be in the playoffs. Now all eyes will be on TCU tomorrow. And I did a preview on that game earlier today. And I do think that it's very, very possible that TCU gets beat by Kansas State. Remember, that Kansas State defense was all beat up. They were all beat up the first time they played TCU. So let's switch helmets real quick. On to TCU. All eyes are going to be on you, TCU. And it's going to be a test. It will be a test. Kansas State is a good team. They're a very good team, actually. And it took Kansas State getting down to their third-string quarterback for TCU to come back. They had to come back from a big-time deficit. I think they were down like 28-3 or 28-10. They were down big. And this was at home. This was at home. I still don't trust that defense 100%. And what I say about USC, that defense, I still didn't trust it 100%. And when they needed them the most, the defense let USC down. Is the same story going to go for TCU? Is TCU going to have to rely on their defense tomorrow, and the defense will let them down? The last spot for the college football playoffs of 2022 will be decided tomorrow. TCU, if you win, you're in. If you lose, it's not guaranteed that you're out, but it's also not a guarantee that you're in. You really need to win tomorrow because I tell you what, the playoff committee is salivating right now. They are absolutely salivating. They already know that Ohio State is in. They already know it. Now they're going to be watching TCU tomorrow, and they're going to try to figure out every way in the book to get mighty Alabama into the playoffs. And if you lose convincingly, that might very well happen. So I'm hoping TCU gets in, and then we have 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, 3 TCU, and 4 Ohio State. And the matchups would look like this. Number 1 Georgia versus number 4 Ohio State. Georgia wins by 20. And then number 2, Michigan against number 3, TCU. And I think Michigan handles TCU by 10 points or so. So then you have number 1, Georgia against number 2, Michigan for the national championship. I don't care who makes it and who don't make it. I do think it will come down to Georgia versus Michigan. And I think Michigan is much more prepared this year. I'm telling you right now, I'm leaning heavily in the direction of Michigan as far as winning the national championship. So one more spot left to be decided, and all eyes are going to be on TCU tomorrow. Stay tuned. Y'all let me know in the comments section just how surprised were you by USC getting absolutely blown out by Utah? And do you think TCU does the same thing, drops the ball, and they miss the playoffs because the playoff committee tries to slide Alabama in there? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.